Hello everyone, this is Meher and with me we have our special guest Hamid, who is a PhD in mechanical engineering
Yes.
and computational fluid dynamics.
Yep.
I myself have a PhD but in gender and health. So today we are going to talk about this event that has gained, worldwide recognition, which is the submersible that went missing on Sunday, which is June 18th, and unfortunately, it was later, 4 days later, discovered. Its debris was discovered near Titanic's wreckage, and it is now known that all 5 members on board did not possibly survive because it faced a catastrophic implosion. So, Hamid, tell me about it. Like, what really happened with this submersible?
So actually, what happened was the submersible, as it goes down in the depth of the ocean, there is the weight of the ocean above it, right? So as you move down further, the weight or the pressure basically it increases a lot. It's like probably I think they were like how deep were they? Like around 1200, 12,000 feet.
12,500 feet.
Yeah. So at that depth, the pressure is like around almost 550 times of what we pressure we feel right now. So if you don't if you're not able if you're not strong enough, then you are basically there is a catastrophic implosion that everybody's talking about that happens. So here I have a water bottle. Right now, if you see the water bottle, it's from the Sunny, so I hope they sponsor us. But anyway, so if you take any water bottle, now the pressure it's open on this end, so the pressure outside and inside is all atmospheric, right? So as you move down in the depth of the ocean, this pressure basically increases on the submarine. So
Okay.
probably based on what kind of material it is, what kind of thickness and geometry it is, they basically have designed it in a way said this thing doesn't happen that much, right? But since they made the body as a carbon fiber, so what happened was it was fine otherwise, but as it reached a certain threshold, which is around 12,500, this thing happened basically.
Oh.
So the pressure was so high that it couldn't bear, or it didn't have time to react to the high pressures, right? Otherwise, for example, if they were going like maybe like 100 feet, they would have seen some crack developing or something like that. But since it's like a buckling phenomena, more like a buckling phenomena for columns, so this implosion happens like in probably milliseconds or something at that high pressures.
So there is no way the people on board would have known what has happened.
Obviously not. And I think in a negative way, the credit goes to the captain. I think he should have done a better job in terms of like, look at the microstructure of the sub itself and then figure out, okay, whether we need to make sure that material or based on the strength of material is good enough or not. To go that deep. But since it seems like he didn't have those procedures in place, so the sub wasn't inspected in a critical way. So that kind of led to, because I know the same sub was used in a couple of other successful dives, right? But then suddenly this happens. So that
Yeah.
means there was already some material deformation that was going on.
Yeah, on their website, the vessel carrier was OceanGate, which is a company which does these Titanic wreckage tourism, and they claim that already 28 people have boarded their vessel and been there since 2021. So it's been a couple of years that they were doing this. We do know that it's coming out that it was an experimental vessel, which means that no regulatory body had examined it or certified it. So what do you think about this high risk travel industry not certifying, and why you think the submersible was allowed to even go in these deep waters without these certifications?
Well, I guess first of all, I think there are no procedures in place, right? So we don't find any procedure, or there isn't any authority that governs all of them to make sure, okay, certain things are designed in a proper way and then they are safe for the passenger, especially if you're carrying passengers, right? You can do an experiment on your own in your home, right? Nobody's watching you and things are fine. But when you involve other people, you're obviously taking much more risk in that. So obviously the absence of certain procedures, and then I would say the designer or the manufacturer who was the pilot himself, probably there were like a lack of procedures or understanding in terms of, you know, whether this sub was tested under fatigue, under different kind of loads. So fatigue is basically when certain material is under cyclic load. Like for example, your car, it can go up to certain thousands of cycles. So that's why your car has a certain life, right? So the same load, if it is being applied after over and over again. And then there's also another phenomena which is creep, where you have low temperature would actually change that cycle rate as well. So whether all those procedures are done or not, and then if it is properly designed, if it's properly tested, if it's properly inspected, so whether all of those procedures are in place or not. But I guess there's a big time investigation going on that would eventually figure out, you know, what was lacking and what actually caused all of this to occur. But there's a lot of gaps here, both in terms of policy and in terms of procedures that are in place. And
yeah, we do know that Stockton Rush, who was the CEO of OceanGate as well as the pilot on this submersible, he was an aerospace engineer himself. He had designed an experimental aeroplane as well, and he was the basic, push behind these deep ocean explorations. And apparently there is a market for these explorations among the high-rich class who want to go deep ocean. But we know that two of the passengers, they were from Pakistan, British origin, and being a Pakistani, we know currently there's a lot of debate going on that, you know, people spend almost $250,000 per person to be on the submersible. So this person took his 19-year-old son with him as well to celebrate Father's Day and have that father-son bonding. So there's this conversation around how could someone spend $500,000, which is equivalent to 15 crore rupees, and be in this submersible, whereas, you know, Pakistan suffers from economic crisis as well as there's a poverty crisis, there's hunger crisis. So what do you say about the social implications of this?
well, I would say that's a question that only people from Pakistan can ask, because nobody else mentioned that ever. Neither CNN, no other news outlet, or like either the right or the leftist media, nobody mentioned that, right? Because obviously $250,000 is not a lot of money in larger context of people living in Europe or the US, for example. It's still a lot of money for sure. But then, of course, if you were to convert it to Pakistani rupees, you'd get a lot of money, right? But I would say it's more about recreation, what people think is important for them and what they enjoy, and more like the main problem is not the money. It's more like, you know, the guy who asked his son to accompany him, and I guess there's also some news on his aunt wasn't the guy's Daud's sister wasn't claimed that, you know, his son wasn't ready for it, or he was having doubts and all that. And even I heard another interview on CNN where a father and son duo mentioned that, you know, the CEO actually approached them, but then they had questions and then they weren't very satisfied with that. So it's more about like, there's on one hand you have the risk and and on the other hand you have your entertainment. So if you want to combine those, there should be like a balance between them. Especially if you are a CEO of a company and you're running some things, you want to make sure that, you know, procedures are in place and then things are not only properly designed but properly tested and inspected as well, because otherwise you lose lives. And in this incident you can clearly see, you know, that's a tragic event for sure for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And even though we might argue that there is no global or social value to visiting Titanic, but I do know that the three other passengers, including the pilot himself, they were all for deep ocean voyages, research, and learning about the deep ocean. I know Stockton Rush even mentioned that ocean is the universe, so his company claimed themselves to be the SpaceX of ocean, considering the fact that only 18 people have actually been in deep ocean, and as compared to space where 24 people have landed on moon.
Yeah.
So we don't know much about that, but I agree with that kind of exploration. That I actually got more admired by the fact that somebody who has all the means to spend on these voyages also have the interest to take that risk, right? Like, so I'm more for, like, that's the curiosity and the passion that they pursued. But I am definitely sad with the outcome that happened, especially for a 19-year-old kid who apparently didn't want to go but went because his father wanted to go. So what do you see the future of these high-risk travel industry?
I guess first of all there should be like better procedures in place, and I'm pretty sure that at least U.S. authorities would make sure that anything that goes underwater is, it's properly tested, and there's a procedures in place. And I guess the other aspect would be like, even if you are a company, the thing about be quick to the market. That should be better, leveraged with safety, and you should have an adequate safety so that you don't compromise any of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's what James Cameron, who is the producer of Titanic, also said, that you don't take paid customers when you have not tested enough.
Yeah. For especially for paid like you can do it individually as well. Like obviously there's a lot of experimental things, and then again the question is like how much of fatigue testing did he do for the vessel itself, like whether he was able to send that vessel as a remote operated vehicle and at these depth, and how many of those testings were actually performed.
Absolutely.
Right. Usually what you do is like you do it at elevated or lower very low temperatures, and then on in a probably less pressure environment, but then since the temperature is high or low, it becomes a very severe environment like the ocean itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think on the positive side, what this event has generated is it has gathered more interest around deep ocean voyages and explorations, and sparked those conversations around who bears the insurance costs, who bears the risk, who bears the rescue operational costs, because apparently they were operating in international waters, and all of these people were from diverse countries, from US, UK, Pakistan, and the countries, like they operated from Canada, so Canadian government as well as the US government, and then the British government, they were all involved in this apparently millions of dollars rescue operation, and they estimated like it might cost up to $100 million. So who's gonna at the end of the day bear that cost?
The funny thing is, from Pakistan they said like you want to thank all the countries that are involved. So that's kind of a funny remark. We just want to thank them, and that's it.
Yeah, apparently, obviously, countries like Pakistan cannot afford to do these rescue operations. But it's interesting to see that there is a demand for such exploration in our country as well, among the rich of our country.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tourism in Pakistan also going on up in the northern areas, and then again, safety is a big issue over there as well. So probably it's a good time to think about where we talk about like increase the tourism, right? We want to make sure that that's also done in a safe way, because usually over here insurance companies and they basically bear and then the business owners itself, they bear the brunt of all of that. But the question is, in Pakistan they don't. They want to make sure that okay, they get it the cheapest price, and probably safety might be a concern, but probably not the top priority. But
Absolutely.
I guess this kind of tells you, that in any kind of industry like this, in the recreational industry, you want to make sure that safety is the topmost priority.
Absolutely, and in the last, I would just like to remind the U.S. admiral's comments who said that these are unforgiving environments. Imagine 12,000 feet below in the ocean. It's an uncontrolled and unpredictable environment out there. And you mentioned that the pressure is 550 times more than on the surface. So anything that you design for such an environment has to bear pressure and just pressure. If it's not meant for dealing with that, this is the catastrophic. But lastly, on this note, I would like to ask you about that. Stockton had been warned by the industry experts back in 2018. They wrote a letter to him saying that this vessel might go for a catastrophic, or there's a potential for having a catastrophic event. But he ignored that and said, these regulations and licenses actually curtail innovation. What do you have to say about other companies who are designing such, submersibles or experiences for people going forward?
Yeah, I guess then again, the safety should be the topmost priority. Definitely, you want to push the boundaries, but make sure that's like with well-engineered designs and testing procedures and inspection procedures in place. And definitely, yeah, you should definitely push for the boundaries in that way. And then we can see, like for example, as opposed to deep sea, deep ocean industry, we see another industry which is on the rise, which is space and exploration industry. But then they have all those procedures in place that ensure that none of those end up in a catastrophic failure. And then even you see that even with the recent Mars mothership, I believe SpaceX called it mothership, but the Mars rocket that was launched, and it kind of blew like probably like 2 kilometers in the air, but then nobody was riding there in it, and it was so it's tested over and over again, and then make sure that whenever human lives are involved, you never take that risk. So they ensure, and I guess even with the Artemis 1 mission, they had to. Because of that, like the cryogenic leakage, I think hydrogen leakage probably that was going on, they had to let go of that. So they delayed it like 3-4 times or 2-3 times or something like that. So safety is in place. There are procedures in place for any kind of exploration like that as well.
Absolutely, I think safety is a must. And actually, this very submersible did not go last year because of the safety concerns. But considering they had used carbon fiber, a lot of experts are weighing in that kind of a material, it might go one time to 10,000 feet and may get so much damage that damage is, not noticed or noticeable for the future, and then the next time at 8,000 feet it might just burst.
Yeah, probably that's something that might happen. There's an official investigation going on, so they'll talk more about that, and we can update you when we get that information.
Absolutely.
But I believe that could very well have happened, that probably 1 or 2 trips might be fine, but then how many trips can it sustain? And then it's the same as, like for example, recently you see with space exploration and then the advent of SpaceX, you see reusable rockets. Rockets were never reusable anytime, right? So maybe that's an option to go, like use a sub for one time and then just discard it and build a new one. If you want to have that exploration experience and be on the safer side. So that industry did it, right? But then they pushed the boundary, like SpaceX pushed that boundary of creating reusable rockets that can actually land back on the Earth, and you can use it next time. Obviously with a lot of tidbits to go with it, but yeah.
Absolutely. So I think there are a lot of ideas and a lot of debates going around, and as we learn more about what really happened and the full investigation comes to the surface, we would know what the future is. But definitely it has sparked new conversations, and the kind of limelight it has got, there was a lot of debate around how people, around 750 people in Greece were also drowned, and almost 700 of them perished, but we didn't talk much about those people as much we have talked about these 5 people going on a submersible. So these social conversations, will also continue to happen alongside, exploring the need for exploring new avenues and new universes, as they call it, will also continue. So stay tuned as we weigh in more with our informational videos around global topics.
Bye bye, guys.
Bye bye.